wet and rainy Denison. Our councilman Josh Massey, as luck would have it, got stuck behind a train over on Morton Street, so he'll be, maybe him right there, so.
It's him. He said, hold it. That's him.
Could it be?
We need insulated walls.
Right.
Anyway, it's 5:34, and we'll call this work session to order. And I appreciate everyone's time, and we'll try to be efficient. Thank you for coming tonight. Especially thank you to our staff. I noticed today in my notes, back on the sign ordinance, my first email was February 20th. So our staff has been working on it that long, trying to help us come up with a plan that will work for us. And I just want to thank all the staff for being here. I know some of you are away from your family, and we'll hope we'll get you back home here pretty quick. But anyway, thanks everybody for being here. Tonight's single item on our work session is to receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff guidance on amending Chapter 19 signs in its entirety and amending Chapter 2 administration, Article 2 authorities, boards, committees, and commissions, creating a Division 8 sign board. So anyway, I'd like to invite Diane York, please, to come forward. Diane spoke to us and gave us an overview, and I asked her to do it again tonight, and she did a great job Monday, a week ago. And so anyway, Ms. York, welcome, thank you, and I'll let you get us started. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, everyone who is here tonight. I will, if I need to go into depth a little bit, just please let me know, but I'll just give a pretty high-level overview of what we've already discussed. So just to recap from the June 15th meeting, staff has been working on this rewrite since 2023. We determined that there was an opportunity to modernize the ordinance to better support corridor aesthetics, address enforcement challenges, and improve usability and to accommodate evolving business and development needs. A project update was provided to City Council in February of 2025. We were directed at the, probably late 25 to bring together a sign committee to review the proposed ordinance as it had been amended in its entirety. That committee was formed, and it consisted of Mayor Crawley, Councilman Redwine, 2 of our Planning and Zoning Commission members, Kurt Chakowski, Ernie Pickens, Tony Kai with DDA, and then also our Development Services staff. We presented the sign ordinance to Council on June 15th, and then we are here now for this work session. The sign ordinance that we've come up with creates modernization and clarification of the sign standards, expands the permitted sign types, creates a section for vintage signs in an effort to allow for signs that fall outside of the commercial historic overlay, which is downtown, but contribute to the unique identity of the community. The creation of the sign board, who would hear and review and take action on sign waivers, and prohibiting new pole and billboard signs, and most importantly, it enhances enforcement and maintenance standards. So we'll go ahead and start here. After the last council meeting, staff understands that there were concerns around prohibiting pole signs and the waiver process. So just to touch on the pole signs, after collaboration, staff and the members of the sign committee came up with the location or area to allow 4 pole signs by right. This is the area that you kind of see here. It's larger than it consists of a lot of residential areas, so please keep in mind that those areas obviously would be exempt from a pole sign allowance, but this is the area that encompasses existing development, as well as a few lots that are undeveloped at this moment. And the thought behind this, and committee members can correct me if I'm wrong, but the thought behind this was to, in the areas where predominant signage was already existing, was to continue to allow for that signage and to not create any kind of discrepancies between new lots that were to be developed, and allow for signage in that area as well. The proposal, outside of this area, we're proposing to prohibit the construction of new pole signs throughout the remainder of Denison. The proposal is our attempt to retain as much of Denison's natural character
and to prevent visual clutter along our corridors, and to provide enforcement measures to assist in beautification efforts in our older corridors, gateways, as established by the comprehensive plan and as an expectation set by City Council. Through our research, I do want to just kind of explain that when we come up with development standards or standards across the board, I don't want to speak for other staff, but I know that they also follow this measure. We do a lot of research. It's not a flippant decision to come up with these standards or to propose them to you or to establish them for a community. So in our process and over several, it's been almost several years, we're almost at the 3rd-year mark, we've looked at other cities. These are the cities in North Texas that do prohibit pole signs altogether. Van Alstyne, in the time that we've started this, has prohibited signs. They kind of started about the same time we did in establishing their sign ordinance, and they do have language in their ordinance prohibiting pole signs. These are some other jurisdictions that allow for pole signs in certain areas. So for Plano, they're overlay districts, Plano Parkway, Preston Road, DNT, 121, and the 190 tollway. Only monument signs are allowed, except for an allowance for retaining wall signage. So if there's a retaining wall, I can't remember exactly if it requires a CUP or an SUP, but they do allow wall signages on their retaining walls. And same for their Research and Technology Center. I did not research to find out what that is, but I'm assuming it's a zoning district for that type of use. It did appear that they allowed pole signs along 75. Allen allows for pole signs within 100 feet of 75. For retail, it's 20 feet to 30 feet if it's a multi-tenant, and within 100 feet of US 75 if it's gas, food, or lodging. Pole signs are allowed at 40 foot. McKinney also allows them and allows for pole signage if there's that linear segment to those thoroughfares you see there. Same thing with Anna. I just want to reiterate that this is just kind of where development is going. I mean, that's a lot of North Texas cities. A lot of them, especially Van Alstyne being smaller than us and not too far away from us, a lot of these cities have developed quickly, and we want to make sure that we're being mindful of what's coming in the future. And so when it comes to pole signs, just maintaining that natural character that makes us unique is one of our reasons why. And not just along 75, but 84, the comp plan designates that thoroughfare as a scenic thoroughfare. 691 is predominantly undeveloped, 1417, 131. Texoma Parkway, it could use some redevelopment, Austin, Armstrong. And so when we're looking at it from a bigger picture, this is why we're proposing to prohibit pole signs. Do we need to pause here for some thoughts, or do you want me to continue?
Back up to that last slide, please.
This one? Yes, sir.
ma'am. Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions for Diane?
Oh, sorry, John.
On those, Josh, you got it.
No, go ahead.
The mentioned cities that you showed earlier that already has an ordinance, do they have any type of variance, exemption, or like a visibility hardship that's in place? And have we came up with alternatives for situations that may, require that?
So that was obviously another concern that was mentioned at the meeting last week. And so we, in discussion and in review of a lot of these cities, we already have a waiver option established within this ordinance, right? It's pretty similar to all of our variance or exception processes amongst other divisions. The caveat for this one was that prohibited signs could not apply for a waiver. So if we moved forward and pole signs were prohibited, then the straight line that you mentioned would be at a disadvantage. because they would not be even allowed to apply for a waiver. That was an excellent example because it does have undue hardship. You know, the viaduct is there, and TxDOT came through and built the viaduct, and that business was probably there before that, and so that is the only way that they can, outside of the internet, that is one of the only ways they can advertise. And so we took that into consideration, and in trying to stay consistent with other jurisdictions, we've removed that prohibited language. And so anybody that deems or does feel like they have a waiver or could apply for a waiver, we would allow that. Now, there is language in the ordinance that has like parameters that you would have to meet in order to apply for a waiver. And if those are met, obviously, then at that point, the building official would take that application, and just like a variance, if you're familiar with the Zoning Board of Adjustments, staff reviews it just like a zoning case, and then would present it to the sign board for a recommendation, denial, approve, whatever the case may be. And if the sign board either was consistent with staff or inconsistent with staff, whatever the case may be, if the applicant was still unhappy, it would come before the city council for final action. And I was going to get to that, but you beat me to it.
When I look at this list, Providence Village was a neighborhood that a mayoral or a gubernatorial candidate decides to make into a city. So I would strike that one from the list as a comparable to what we're doing. I was there when Frisco made this choice. I'm looking at Highland Village. They don't even have enough of an income to have their own police department anymore. They share a library with somebody else because they are basically a dying city as a retirement community. So I think there are several of these that are outliers that would be non-comparable to me. The Colony is about the closest to what we do, given that it is primarily a residential community with some retail and industrial space within it. When Frisco decided to do it, there was a lot of back and forth, right? And they took their read from other cities where you don't want to be Shreveport, where there is so much in the air that it is hard to pay attention to the ground. When they eliminated it and made it into only monument signs, which I appreciated on Preston Road, I appreciated on 423 coming up through Little M when I was a citizen there. It does declutter, but in the absence of GPS as the primary direction finding, and there is a certain population within our community that is not going to use GPS, they're going to look for a sign. Then they ran into traffic problems, where you start having an accident issues, and so that would be more of a police-informed discussion on traffic. I agree that in the city I would like to live in, that we have beautiful big trees, lots of green space, lots of sidewalks, and lots of walking space. But as a business owner that has owned businesses in 6 states and been a landlord, a renter in 6 states and a landlord in several, I also recognize that the only thing better than a sign is a bigger sign for your business. As a landlord, my value for my building is on a commercial side different than the way we value on residential. It is valued on my ability to generate revenue and how predictable that revenue is. Starbucks is worth more as a tenant to a building than a mom and pop because the consistency of revenue. And the more revenue they can generate, the more I can charge them for rent, assuming that the city doesn't get there first and tax them before I get the dollars. So I stand at a crossroads between 2 separate interest groups, a citizen who would like to have a beautification process in which I support the idea that we want to eliminate any aerial sign altogether. And yet, as a landlord, my future value of my investments and effort today is directly corollary to that business's longevity, survivability, and profitability. So a signage issue does compromise that in some ways. As a salesman, I have to fight against production and management. So you and I will be at odds from time to time on how we solve a problem. And we are in the sort of messy middle of that today, right? Where my interest is to push the boundaries and your interest is to push them back. And I appreciate very much that you do exactly that with a strong spine. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
When I look at the cities that I admire around the country, and I do something like 60,000 miles of driving around the country and a lot of international travel, the cities that I admire the most are the ones with the most decluttered skylines. So I can be in support of a reduction, if not a pursuit of elimination of an aerial sign. That being said, I am a member of a capitalist society where I am looking at making my today effort worth more tomorrow to me. And real estate is the way that has traditionally done that. So I also have to speak for those that develop. And in that voice, I would say it seems like the smartest way is for us to have a very clear and unambiguous, unsubjective process for each of the districts we have to have very specific rules. It is anathema to me as a business owner to delay and delay and delay. And I appreciate that we are now 3 years into a process that probably, if we were in business, could have been decided inside of 45 days with studies and action. So it grates on me that we have continued delays. And yet, the delay I think might be pertinent here is that we subdivide our city into the parts of it that we want to beautify. Just like Dallas has their M Streets district, and there are certain things that you are allowed to do there. And in the sign ordinance, as I've seen it in our packet, does some of that, but it doesn't do enough of that for me to say, in a residential area on the south side of Spur 503, there shouldn't be a whole lot of aerial need, right? On the corridors coming down 75 with an undulating highway design, we do need some visibility that would fall in line with what you have on the next slide, where we have some allowances for those signs coming down Morton. So I applaud that alternative. Where I grate is in the prohibited nomenclature that says we cannot have the authority in the future to undo that in those areas. So the way I can come to grips with that is to have these districts clearly delineated. So we have this district is for our high industrial or high retail where we need those signs to be able to bring in and recruit those businesses. And my research with developers and my experience anecdotally is that those signs are not the only reason they would come, but in a future value market like we are, it is going to accelerate how quickly we can get a grocery store of note. I'll leave their name out of it, right? So handicapping it today might be something that has a knock-on consequence to the city you would like to serve and live in the future. So I say all that to say I applaud the effort of the committee and the staff on this. I think we are at the 10th yard line, not the 1 yard line on this, and we are very close. But what I cannot tolerate is that takes us another year to do that last 10 yards. So my question after all of that is to say, how do we go from here to something that reconciles the needs of the business side community that will pay the taxes that ultimately allow for additional staff that make your job easier?
So if I can just, this ordinance, that was a lot. This ordinance is from 2000. The sign ordinance was, I don't know when it was established prior to this, but the amendments that are codified are from 2013. And you look at like the highway overlay which 75 is a part of, we already allow 70-foot pole signs. And it is still predominantly undeveloped. So I'm trying to understand, and obviously there's future concern, and I get that. But I know when 2013 was, because I have a child that was born in 2013, so we're working on 13 years ago. That's 13 years of no development coming through with the allowance for pole signs. And if we're specifically talking about 75, that's a long time. And obviously that was right around the time that, right before the affordable housing program was put into place, and we had that spur of development with all of our infill lots. But then you have the time after that when all of those lots were taken up and we saw our population jump pretty quickly. So and I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that it's scary, and you can't see the future, right? We don't know what the intent or what this is going to, if this is going to hinder us. I can tell you when we talk to developers in pre-development meetings, maybe a little bit more hopeful in the recent ones that we've had where, we said, hey, this is going before council, pole signs may not be allowed. And they just turn around and go, well, do you allow monument signs? Yes. And that's it. And in the past, when we've tried to make, hey, would you do a monument sign? Because they can do a pole sign. Sometimes it's a maybe, and Sometimes they pull a permit and they put up a sign that's 40 foot instead of the 70 foot. But I think that I'm very passionate about that. I don't want to see a Whataburger sign when I'm driving down Lillis Lane. That's a neighborhood. I live in that neighborhood. We have a big neighborhood there. We have a neighborhood on the north side of 120. And then you think about the neighborhoods that are on the west side of 75. I mean, it is a commercial corridor, but the community is seeing these signs from their homes. So lowering them, sure, we could look at that. But I would really stress that we try and come up with a way of prohibiting them to just retain some of that character that we have. Because we're going to look back, maybe not, and maybe I'm putting my feelings into your brains, but we're going to look back and wish that we would have been a little bit more progressive. To wrap that all up and answer your question, we're looking for direction. 3 years in the making, 3 sign committee meetings, a project update. We are looking for direction. If you have direction that you want staff to move forward with as it pertains to your concerns, the waiver thing, I think we have a good understanding on it. Clean up a little bit of the language just to make sure that we're not putting staff or the sign board in a sticky situation when a waiver comes through. But in being consistent with other cities, that's our main objective. And so just removing that word prohibited gives them a path forward. Maybe cleaning up some of the language. But when it comes to pole signs, staff is just, we're at a crossroads with council. And ultimately, we're here so that we move forward. It's time to go night-night.
It's like it's closing time, doesn't it?
We're here to move forward in a manner that we're all, I don't want to say we're all comfortable with, but that you feel more comfortable with. Because we're talking about pole signs, but this ordinance is so much more. I think Mary mentioned it in the last meeting that our staff can't move forward with enforcement manners or penalty provisions when it comes to the obsolete or the dilapidated signs that we see in our older commercial corridors. And this ordinance is not a pole sign ordinance. It's a sign ordinance that has really put language into it, and is probably the vast majority is to give staff a path forward for those types of needs. This is just one small part that we're just trying, because development's coming, and we just want to make sure our community is met with quality and high development, not hard development, not hard standards, but high quality standards that we see in other jurisdictions. And prohibiting pole signs is one of them.
I have a difficult time a little bit prohibiting. So I look at these cities that allow pole signs along 75, and I feel like that area where they are allowed is a little bit limited, especially with the development going on up north. As Josh mentioned, we get a big grocery store on 75, they're gonna wanna put a pole sign up there, and it may not be within that box, I agree in that I think most of our city doesn't need pole signs, right? Even if you go, on the spur by my office, up there, I don't think we necessarily need pole signs there. But if we look at the growth and we look how the construction's going and everything, I think people driving up 75, going 75 miles an hour, it's tough to view businesses if they just have a monument sign. And so I guess my suggestion would be is be like these other cities. What was it? What's the slide? Is it the slide after or slide before? Like Plano, Allen. Like have some of these along 75. Maybe with limited height. As some of these have, but have it along our 75 corridor to allow it. And then as Josh mentioned, have other parts of the town where they are prohibited, or maybe not even prohibited, but in order to do it, you have to go through a process where there's an approval process, whether it's through the sign board, whether it's through P&Z, where they have to go through and, but I have a difficult time as a business owner, like Josh mentioned, where you're gonna prohibit it from here on forward, especially along 75.
And I appreciate that. And I hope that you all know that I appreciate and understand your concerns. I will say that this community is starved for a grocery store. So I think it would, I mean, South Oklahoma, East, West, I think we would find it pretty easily without a pole sign. But I do understand. I understand.
Yeah, I just see 10 years from now, I mean, one of the projections in 10 years, our city's gonna double population. You know, and then, you know, maybe one day it's like Sherman where all of a sudden the frontage roads are now elevated and you have elevated, frontage roads. No one's gonna see the businesses unless they have a pole sign, you know, and it may not be in the too far future where we're at that point, right, where we have elevated frontage roads and things like that, and so then it's like, so then we do this now, and then 10 years from now we're redoing it, or are we looking at a long term?
Maybe 13 years.
Yeah, I mean, it has been 13 years, right? Now, Denison, I've been here 14 years. Denison really has had a pretty stable population for how long? 50 years. I mean, it's been about 20 to 25,000, but that's gonna change in the next 10. We know that for sure. So, I don't know, I think we do need to kind of look at the near future with this, and yeah.
If I may make a proposal, what is before you this evening has that dedicated area that the committee selected as an area that pole signs are allowed, right? That's that polygon that you saw. We can always come back and amend an ordinance, just like we do in other cases, right? We do that all the time. We bring ordinances back. If we find if it's not working, we change it. To Councilman Massey's point of having multiple overlay districts, that can be done through the zoning process. That's a different process, right? And so if the direction from all of you is we now want overlays on Austin to be looked at again, Armstrong, 84, 691, all the ones that we have, plus creating others with, and then we establish what those pole sign heights are within those zoning districts and those overlays in particular, that may solve a lot of different issues. The zoning ordinance rewrite that is going to be coming forward is a time to be having those conversations of those overlay districts and establishing what those heights might be within each district. I don't know if that would help to clarify, since this ordinance in particular, as Diane mentioned, is citywide for a number of different kinds of signs, and within those graphics, it establishes all the heights and the ratios and all of that for the different kind of signs. So in order for us to be able to enforce, if we can get direction on any type of amendments that you want to see, if you want that boundary expanded, I think that's what we're seeking right now, is like, do you want that 75 corridor to be included in what we bring back to you on the 13th, so that we have some type of direction and grounds to move forward from the enforcement piece? And then if your direction is during the zoning rewrite, we want multiple districts, overlay districts, and one of the things we want to see in each of them is a pole sign height. I don't know. I think we're getting confused maybe a little bit on different processes and how to address different areas, rather than looking at this holistically as a sign ordinance, as Diane mentioned, not just pole signs in particular. And we really need that enforcement measure to help staff move forward so that we start to see that redevelopment in a good way. So I'm just trying to get your thoughts and your direction on, from tonight, where do we go, so that we can always come back and amend things or go through different overlay district processes and introducing those and taking it through P&Z and then coming to council. But we want to make sure that we're not confusing different process as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that clarification. I think that's really good. I think we can go forward moving that. I would propose to expand this area to include the 75 corridor.
Could you tell me exactly what that means to you? What does that 75 corridor, in your eyes, does it go from city limits to city limits?
I think it starts at 691
Okay.
south, and
All the way up to the river? That's really what we need
Yeah.
so that we can go back, make the changes, and put it before you at the next council meeting.
When is the zoning rewrite?
Well, that's gonna depend on whether you give me more money on Friday.
Follow up.
So it sounded like that, I'm in.
And the follow-up question would be, so if we're doing this as a national politician, where we're approving the whole thing, and then we come back and amend it later when we figure out what we signed, then is there a report, a study that you would recommend we have that will objectively inform those choices instead of subjectively asking future councils to come back to
Right.
the Austin Avenue corridor, for instance?
I think it's really, we can go back and track how many people ask for a pole sign. If we have that process in place for a waiver, we are going to have that documented. So let's say you move forward with this on the 13th and you're all good with it, and maybe we expand that 75 corridor. And so it allows within that corridor, and then somebody comes to Austin Avenue and says, I want a new pole sign. Well, here's the process. Submit your waiver application, the sign board approves it, and we're good to go. That's how we would track how many people came to us and said, yes, I needed this, there was a path forward, is it working or is it not working? And maybe we don't have any. I don't think that'll be the case, but as long as we have a way of documenting that, which all of the meetings, as you know, and the agendas, and we can go back and track all of it, because then they'll have to get a permit as well. So we can provide those reports in whatever manner you would like to see it.
I'm looking for a third-party research, something like Hewlett-Zollars would do, because the tenants who say no before I ever bring them to you don't get registered in your report. And those are the tenants that impact my bottom line. And I
Right.
think that would be true for any developer or any recruiter for developers within our city.
But we wouldn't say no, right? If that's in there and that's what the ordinance says, then staff has a responsibility to say to someone, no, they're not allowed, but there is a waiver process. Is that something you would like to pursue?
I'm speaking specifically of the prohibition vocabulary.
Okay.
So if it's not prohibited except, which seems like it should be another word besides prohibited, then how do we adjust that in the future? It seems like we need data. And the data
Right.
needs to be not only what comes through your office, but would it also be, say, what comes through
Then
Chamber and DDA, or is there a third party,
You're gonna have to pay for
streets?
it, right? If we're
Understood.
gonna do that, then that's the planning measures we need to take. In 5 years, we wanna be able to assess, is this working or not, and do we need to rewrite it?
Okay. So just to be clear, there isn't some off-the-shelf survey that we can hire somebody to do that would inform this decision clearly?
I'm sure we could find one, but not that I'm aware of.
Understood. Thank you.
Did that clarify or confuse?
I'm good at both.
That wasn't just directed at you, it was for everybody.
Yeah, I think that I'm also in favor of expanding this. You know, when I look at this map and I see where Willer's Barbecue is and all the different things that have been in that spot south of Walmart and all the things that's failed in that spot of Walmart, south of Walmart. And I remember when there was a Chili's there about 20 years ago, and everything seems to go there to die. And I think there needs to be some type of exception to be able to market it better through signs. I think the other point I wanted to make, and I just want to hear y'all's opinion on this. What billboards do you like to see in town? Which ones do you just enjoy seeing? I like the get roofed billboards that shows all of our high school seniors, when it comes to winter sports or fall sports, and they get showcased. And I think those things have become nostalgic to be able to see as we go across the viaduct and see. And I think if a storm came through and took that out, that is something that has showcased our kids for a number of years on that particular one. Of course, we got Britton Brooks that's all over town as well too. But there's some of these billboards that I'm okay with seeing. It's something that's become somewhat nostalgic, you know. So, I don't know, y'all got any other billboards that y'all just like seeing in town?
I don't have an issue with billboards. I think going with the capitalistic view, I think it's a way of advertising, right? I certainly understand the reason of not decluttering our sky and everything, but
Just to be clear, there's a difference between a billboard and a pole sign.
Yeah, but the billboards are
it does
also
say
affected by
billboard.
this
I
thing.
think it says
It does.
Billboard
But
is
billboards,
inclusive.
TxDOT is getting rid of billboards.
Right,
So that's
that's
outside
not
of this.
within our control.
Gotcha,
The
okay.
billboards on 75 are not.
So the billboards along Austin Avenue, would this not apply to those?
There wouldn't be no new billboards.
And if it was destroyed,
That's a different-
and if it's over 50%, past deconstruction, they couldn't replace
Correct.
it. So,
Right, but I mean, yes. But on 75, because of the space between each billboard, there isn't room to put anymore, and then TxDOT is moving in the other direction.
I think, I mentioned that just also with the pole signs, having an exception, a variance to be able to replace something that may have been destroyed. Something that's, and it's may not be a historical or legacy piece, but it kind of is, when you think about it over time, and you're expecting to see every season who's the kids is going to be showcased along Austin Avenue. And I think that's creating opportunities to replace the ones that we're used to seeing.
So that would be also the waiver process, right? That would have been a natural cause that none of us had anything to do with. And so I would make that recommendation to whomever owns the billboard to come before the sign board and say, it was knocked down, can we replace it? I think no one's looking to not be logical either, right? And so there are circumstances that people come to us all the time, and we have to work in the gray sometimes, right? Of how do we make sure that we're addressing the need while also enforcing the ordinances?
So I'd like to know y'all's opinion. I would propose to expand this area to include 75 from 691 to 84. But
Not all the way to the
Yeah,
ETJ
just
limit.
84, not to
91?
Randall Lake or,
at least 84. I'm okay with it going.
All the way to the high school.
All right.
Yeah.
Could we take a little break?
Sure.
We have a number of people in the audience that may want to make a comment or two, so let's,
Yep.
if we don't mind, is there anyone here that would like to make a comment? All right, first hand I saw was Mr. Tom Johnson. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I know most of you. For those that I don't, Tom Johnson, Covenant Development. I'm the developer of Gateway Village. I'm also a landlord, so I appreciate Councilman Massey's comments there. I held back from almost saying amen a couple of times, so let me tell you that. So over the years, we started Gateway Village 25 years ago. So certainly, I didn't think I would be here today, still trying to finish up the development of Gateway Village, but especially it's on the retail side now. I can tell you that we've worked hand in hand with the staff. Always enjoyed a great relationship we have with the staff, with Tony Kai and all the council. It's been a partnership from day one, and we sincerely appreciate that. I think it's paid dividends for both of us. Let me say on the onset, I'm not against updating and renewing a sign ordinance. In fact, we were invited to be part of the committee and input into that 2013 sign ordinance, and so we were very appreciative of being able to give some input into that ordinance and to let our voice be heard. And it was a good meeting because, as I heard said today, we had to give and take. There was things that we wanted that we could live without, and the city listened to us for that. So one of the things that I'd just like to mention to you, I was not even aware of the new sign ordinance until just a week ago. And so I quickly got a copy of the ordinance. I'm not going to take the council's time tonight to go through that, but just in a cursory review, I've got 14 major points that as a developer of Gateway Village that I've got serious concerns with that's in this ordinance. And I would like to volunteer. Myself or my son would be more than happy if y'all so desired to be able to do a quick meeting with staff. We'd be able to provide input. I'd go over all these issues to be able to tell them, because I'm still, from what I've heard tonight, I share, I think, most of all the views of all the council members, and I'm thinking that we could hopefully have some input and ask other developers to be able to let them bring back to you something that we would fully support. I will tell you that my biggest concern, I mean, I've also heard it kind of voiced here, the biggest concern in that is the pole ordinance. So it's, as Tony can tell you, he and I have worked tirelessly for years to get a grocery store in Gateway Village. We've been extremely close a couple of times. But I will tell you, if we're ever successful, get a grocery store ordinance, this sign ordinance as written now will prohibit that. Will kill it as a developer. I currently have a Dairy Queen, or there's a Dairy Queen under construction out there. I'm building the retail building that has UPS as an anchor tenant, and I'm currently under a letter of intent with a national restaurant that all of us will be proud of, and all three of those, in the negotiating process, a major question was asked: would they have a pole sign on Highway 75? If I would have told them no, it's only a monument sign, then I guarantee you there would not be that development going on out there. The point I was going to make has already been made tonight. Gateway Village is, the ground of Gateway Village is about 35 to 40 feet below the roadway. So you take a 40-foot sign, and even if it was allowed, a 40-foot sign, you're not going to be able to see it on Highway 75. So without going into, I'd be happy to answer questions, go into details, but I do have serious concerns. I can tell you that as a developer, this would seriously hurt my development chances to finish up retail in Gateway Village. I'd be happy to answer questions on that. But I would just ask that you give the developers a chance to give staff some input and go over these things and try to work out something that we could do together like we did in 2013. So appreciate you, unless you got questions, that's my statement. I appreciate your time.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate your thoughts and comments. Anyone else? Okay.
For the record here, Kurt Chakowski, living here in Denison, 1419. I have traveled a lot. I have not been I don't own any property. I don't own a business, but I've been around the world and seen lots of other places. I'm a member of the chairperson of the Historic Preservation Board here and on the Planning and Zoning and on this side committee. As you make the decisions and give the guidance to staff, I would always ask you to remember about, we're looking forward here, and we are going to double. And I have to tell you, if I'm going to get my brakes fixed, or my steering aligned, I'm not going to be driving down Austin Highway looking for a pole sign. I'm going to go to Google, and then I'm going to go to my GPS, punch it in. And the growth that we're going to have coming here is going to be of that ilk that is going to change the demographics here. Now, I can understand along the 75 corridor, if I'm going to traveling and I'm going to go to restaurants near me, I could be looking for the sign to be able to go to a restaurant. But if I'm going to go to the UPS spot, I'm probably not going to look for the pole sign for it. I'm going to go to my GPS and punch it in and then drive there. So as we do this, and if we're going to parse this out, as we develop this polygon here in the sign committee, I would ask to be cognizant and a study that would look at each of the different areas of the city will do nothing but elongate this time. And I think the zoning and the overlays is a more elegant way to address it, so that the time involved to get this guidance so that we can do, we can do the ordinance part of this is not taken up by that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
And just a point of clarity on my commentary is the study would be to inform the future councils for any iterations we needed to adjust in the future. I agree with you. Elongation of the process is the last thing I want to do.
Military, you can study things to death, and at times you just got to go with that 85% solution and make the adjustments after that. So I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but I moved here in 2013, even though I called Denison my residence for 49 years. It's time to fix this.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Hello.
Just tell us who you are.
Sure, yeah. Britton Langford, class of 92, for what that's worth. I work for the Woodmont Company. It's a brokerage development firm. We partnered with the Waterloo Trails ownership that just broke ground on phase 1. I don't know if everybody's seen that yet, but there is some activity up there on 75. We have a bit of grade change as you come down to Crawford, which I'm sure y'all have seen. There's a bank on the north side of Crawford, opposite of this property, which is east of 75. That will definitely need pole signs to promote retail and restaurant that we plan to bring into the 12-acre park that's designated for commercial of the 30-acre mixed-use development. So just here to stress that we'd like to be part of that 75 consideration for pole signs. I think the cities mentioned that do allow pole signs are predominantly defined by 75 presence, just as Denison is too. So love to support that as well for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Bill Wostowski, Center Point Commercial Development, and I've been in the shopping center business probably almost 30 years. And I've been through some cities where there were some pretty prohibitive sign ordinances, including Durango, Colorado, where we had to work with Walmart and put all of our sign package together in one sweeping deal and put it up. I can tell you from my experience at one particular experience in Irving, where the city decided they were going to reduce pylon signs on one of the corridors right across from Irving Mall, and we had a former Pizza Hut. And after we lost that sign, our calls went down. Really, we probably estimated that we probably lost a third of the value of that pad site by not having the visibility, including you couldn't see anything from 183 on this because it was kind of like you have over here off 75 and 120 where you head west and you get tucked around the corner a little bit. I can tell you if you poll the commercial real estate brokers, especially retail brokers within DFW, you're probably going to get a 95% to 97%. Pole signs are very critical to most of the retailers that we represent. When I have this conversation, and I have this conversation as a council member in Pottsboro about some of the ordinances we passed, you have to be very careful with your ordinances. I'm still, a year later, trying to get a retractment on a 2x3 commercial real estate signs now that was passed within. We had no schematics on signs. We had several citizens that had comments, no drawings whatsoever at that time. You have to be very careful with these deals because they're very hard to roll back once you pass. It may seem like it's easy, but it's not. A lot of education has to be done, but you have to do real world education, and that is calling the brokers, calling these tenants, and you can call them direct. You can get the ICSC commercial, the commercial shopping center that they have in Vegas. You can actually get a list of those and call some of the heads of the real estate departments and ask the questions. And we're going through this too, as we speak. But I would think 75 you have a 75-mile-an-hour speed limit. You also have TxDOT is elongating these exits now. I would say that the 1417 exit in Sherman is a pretty good example of this, where TxDOT kind of put the blue sign that has all the retailers listed, but you're almost up the ramp before you see it. But if you go off that exit going southbound and you see the pylon, the monument signs, or the monument signs, not the pole signs that are there, you can't really tell what those tenants are until you get almost upon them because of the way the ramps. TxDOT is planning to do this more and more. They don't want the backups on the exits like they've had in the past. 7582 is a good example. They're elongating these. And with that elongation, you're going to need on your corridors these pylon signs to be able to identify. Not everybody uses Google. And some people probably don't need to stare at their phone too much while they're driving. That's why we have a lot of accidents, but it's a whole nother subject. But what I would probably say is on your corridors going down like Morton, maybe you graduate your signs to a certain height as you go and get towards Main, where those areas are more maybe a monument sign area. You don't do a clean, broad stroke brush to try to do your whole sign criteria. Keep your outside corridor on 75 that are high-speed corridors at a certain height, and then work probably as you work down Morton and 503 and some of these other corridors, maybe graduate your signs as you go towards Main Street. Just my thoughts of being in the business for a long time, and I'd be happy, like Tom, to be involved in any communication or talk about experience and talk about how, maybe put some interjection on some of these sign criteria going forward if I can help in any way.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Brad Sylvester, I just kind of want to piggyback off what they've been saying, 75 on a piece of property. Like I said, I think it would affect its marketability if we do away with the post signs. I do understand some, upkeep standards and stuff, so forth, but, as far as where we're at on 75, I think that should be, available to do post signs, so.
All right.
That's where I'm at.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Anyone else?
Ask a question real quick.
Yes, sir.
So, to me, it seems like staff wants to pass this mainly for the enforcement rule, right? To start cleaning up the old signs. Is there a way, since it seems like we need to work this pole sign issue out, is there a way where we can remove that portion of it and just, have the portions, the essential portions like the enforcement, things like that we can pass so we can start working on that, and then we can continue to work on the pole sign?
Do you mean remove it whole cloth or remove the prohibited pieces?
Well, I think, see, and that's where, leave it as, that portion as is in the thing, but just include the other stuff. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I don't know. I know staff wants to get going so they can start enforcing and cleaning up the old signs, and this is holding it up. I don't know if we can just remove this part for now and just pass the enforcement thing so we can start cleaning up the old signs.
Okay.
So if we pull out a piece, then that essentially means it doesn't exist, right? So then it's not there at all, so people can't do it. So we have a current sign ordinance, right? Mm-hmm. We could always, on the 13th, amend that current one, whatever we're working off of right now. I know that's not an awesome solution, but it's a path forward to amend it to include the penalty clause so that staff can at least start addressing some of it while you work through the rest of it.
Well, let's.
I get that, but there's got to be some type of compromise so that you all can work through this, give us that direction, and if we have to amend something, just the penalty clause piece on what currently exists, and continue to work off of what we already have, then I don't know if that helps you.
Let's start with common ground. Everybody find Lois Lane and Morton Street. Everybody knows where the new Whataburger is, right? Nobody thinks there should be a 70-foot pole sign at the back of Whataburger, correct? Right. So none of us think that there should be a 70-foot pole sign there. So we all agree that we need to do something. However, across the street from the jalapeno tree or in front of K10, those people need pole signs, right? So how high do they need to be? 40 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet? The Dairy Queen, it's got to have a pole sign. You can't, there's no way that DQ in front of Heyday can have a monument sign. So we're all presenting good points. We just got to figure out a compromise. And we can't go, I have no idea how the Colony goes from pole signs to nothing. Is it because they're already built out and it doesn't matter? That's one of my personal rules is to never go from one extreme to the other. So we've got to find a compromise.
Mr. Johnson, may I ask you a question, sir?
Absolutely.
How far down the road does a pole sign need to be visible to make it monetizable for your tenant?
Currently, I think we have 60 foot out there. I don't think we went 70 foot. I think there's a 60-foot sign out there now for Culver's. And it could be because it's offset, but I think QT and Sherman is also 60 foot. So depending upon which direction if you're going to the south, you're elevated, you can see those quite well. Right. If you're going to the north, I literally look driving over here. So you're almost at the intersection of 691 before you see the Culver sign because it's just offset. It's still 60 foot, but it's offset and kind of hidden back there. So, and I don't know if that helps, but did that answer your question? Or
It answered the first one. The second one.
Could I add one more thing?
Yes, sir.
And I apologize about this. I know that I focus on the pole signs. It seems like that's all of the issue here on the pole sign. But I will tell you, there's several other things in here that in my mind are just as serious as a pole sign. I'll give you one, for instance, is that the way it's currently written now, if I understand it correctly, you have to have your certificate of occupancy before you can put up your sign. So in almost every retail project that I've dealt with, we deliver a building, and then you'll know this, the tenant comes in and does their finish out. They're not gonna want to wait until 6 months or 8 months if they finish their tenant out and get to finish out and get their certificate of occupancy before they put up a sign. They need the advertising on that building immediately. And you'll notice it in construction, a lot of times pole signs will go up while a restaurant is under construction. So that's another concern here, and I share the comment that someone else made. If you pass something and say we can get a variance, I'm never going to get past first base with any buyer or land lease over saying we'll go in and change it. They'll go somewhere else. So I'm still hoping that we could do. I don't think this would be a long process. I know I could cover my 14 things with staff in a day or an hour. So, I mean, we could give them some input if you so choose. Happy to let them at least hear my concerns. I think anyone here would probably let them hear their concerns if that's a possibility besides just trying to do something by your next council meeting. So.
You answered my second question.
Mr. Sylvester, you might want to say something. Please come up.
Thank you. I really appreciate the fact, I'm Robert Sylvester. Appreciate the fact that you're getting input and look like some of you have some reservations, and, I think there needs to be a little more discussion. The committee, I think, was formed in November, October. January, February. So, I mean, there seems to be this sense of urgency, but there really is not. The word compromise has been used. I was on the original Planned Parkway signage committee back 35 years ago. And the committee of 5, two of them said there should be no signage, period. And the other 2 said it should be completely unregulated. Well, we compromised, and we ended up somewhere in between. But the concern back then was the highway bypassed our downtown, bypassed our downtown. So we were trying to preserve and give our businesses a chance of survival. So, and I agree with Councilman Courtwright. The businesses to the south need to compete at an equal advantage as far as signage. No, I don't think any business should have two pole signs. I don't think they need to be 75 feet. We need to restrict, not prohibit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, I just want to make this right, and I agree. Me personally, when I feel this push, like we got to get this done, I feel like we rush and then we regret the decision because we didn't look through it thoroughly. And so I get that we want to enforce and we want to do this, but I think we got to get this right. And so I'm with you. I think we need to get it right and not just go ahead and just do a rush decision, get something done so we can start acting.
I think what staff is looking for is very specific input, so we can come to a very specific compromise. You're right, but now the next step is, okay, Ms. York, I think this, I think that. We need to give them.
Well, so I mentioned starting at 691 on 75 and going to 84, or looking at maybe 91 would be better. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, yes, I agree with that.
To 91.
So
I would say extend it from 691 to.
But what we don't want is another Whataburger situation where something's all the way across from CVS. They don't need a 70-foot. So we need to be very specific about that.
We don't want another heyday situation either, where you got a postage stamp size sign downtown when you've got a Gray's Jewelers one down here. What if we use the 13th as a benchmark for the advice you're asking for? So instead of voting to make an ordinance approved that day, if we take the next 2 weeks and meet with Mr. Johnson and other stakeholders to get the bullet points, staff included in the meetings, so that we've got an understanding of what it is that guidance needs to be from the people that help generate the taxes that support the endeavors we are striking for our citizenry. That gives us 10 days to get feedback before we have to come back and say, this is what we believe should be done.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly what your direction is. So that would be then a project update on the sign ordinance on the 13th, because no action's being taken tonight. You don't intend to take action on the 13th then? Is that correct?
Mr. Johnson, did I understand you correctly that you would be available between now and the 13th to have that meeting? And any of the other stakeholders who wanted to have voice in that? Is there anybody who would not be available before the 13th to be able to give staff and council feedback?
So are you wanting staff to meet with this group, or are you all wanting to meet with that group? Because
I don't know that
you all
those are
have to
mutually
make the
exclusive.
well, I think it is if you're giving staff direction on what you want to see. If that's the feedback that you're seeking, and then we're looking to take your direction based off of that feedback at a later date, because then we have to go back and write and do that kind of stuff. So
She's wanting more eyes and ears at that meeting, like maybe 2 or 3 of us attend the meeting, or?
well, if you're giving the direction, I need you all to be hearing the information, right?
Right, that's what.
Yes.
Yeah. But I have no problem with staff starting the work based on the feedback given by stakeholders between now and then, so that we have, we're closer to that 1 yard line than the 10-yard line on the 13th.
So I'm hesitant to do that from a writing standpoint. I
Understood.
don't want to have multiple versions and
Okay, fair enough.
without the larger group seeing it. So is a
Okay.
project update acceptable on the 13th of July? At which time, in between, you're all having meetings and getting feedback from whomever, and then you provide staff that direction on the 13th. This is what we want to see, so that we bring it back on August 3rd to either, or at whatever date you tell us to bring it back down the line.
So then I'm hearing that you want us to meet with Tom and then the project.
I'm
update.
asking you. You tell me how you see this going? Who do you want?
How about if you have a signboard that has Mayor Crowley, Mr. Redwine, Tony Kai, Ernie Pickens, and I, and then invite Mr.
So the committee.
Okay, so the task force meet with Tom, and then we can have the update on the 13th and go from there. Okay.
Is Mr. Johnson the only one you would like to meet with, or are
No,
there
I mean,
others?
whoever is invited to the meeting, Britton, Bill, whoever wants to come.
Is there value in extending that to others?
I would think so. I mean, right?
Yeah. I mean, all the input we can get, right?
The follow-up question she could ask is, who else?
Hey, right, and then, yeah. There's value in a smaller group because you get better feedback. I mean, I don't want to, you don't want to meet with 20 people. The math isn't on your side. Yeah, it'd be good.
So which others? Or how would we determine who else to include?
Well, we wouldn't need Forest Pool because Britton would speak for the Waterloo Trails group.
Who else?
Maybe the people that took the time to come to this meeting are invited and we just leave it there.
Chris, if I come to that meeting, do we now exceed quorum for that?
More than 3?
I'll let you come.
Then you could come. That's just the 3 of us.
Then I'd like to be there as well, please.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Have we given you enough feedback?
That's, yep.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that staff is clear.
All
Good.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask something real quick? Mr. Johnson, I got a question for you. With Gateway Village, and you can educate me on this, is it popular or an idea to have one single sign that lists all of the businesses within that development? Is that something that could potentially be a solution?
In a perfect world, the answer is yes. If we were town center and we had all of our tenants together at one time and we could use a pylon sign, everybody would prefer that, including me, the developer. Unfortunately, like I said, I've been 30 years now trying to actually 26 years, 25 years, trying to get this developed. And it's not worked out the way I had hoped. So as you've seen, we get Heyday, we get Urban Air, we get the Hilton, Starbucks. And so the good news is we've had more activity this year since the first year than we've had in 5 years. So I think it's at least it's a good season for retail now. The news for the Sherman Denison area has absolutely helped. So I have more activity now than I've had in years. So if they were all together and you could say we're going to do a pylon sign, that would be great. And frankly, in developing the grocery store, we would think that top of the hill, it would be reserved for a pylon sign that would advertise the grocery and all the other junior anchors around the grocery. Then you wouldn't need all those signs. But I heard it said earlier that the signage to the retailers and the grocers are absolutely required. They're just not going to do it if it's in Denison, Texas, especially on Highway 75 where it's elevated and you're going so fast, 75 miles an hour. But at this point, I think if we could slowly work together to get to that direction, you've got my commitment that I would be trying to get anybody to go to a pylon sign because it's more efficient for everyone involved. But unfortunately, when you're selling one pad at a time,
Right.
and you don't have a pylon sign, you can't have a pylon sign out there that just has 1 or 2 tenants on it. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. So
Absolutely.
okay.
There's a situation on 75 that specifically has that issue, is by the IHOP, where there's multiple landowners that have a shared sign. What if you've got a big development, it works great. they all put it in as part of the common area, and they all have to pay a pro rata share. On that deal, there's several different landowners, a couple different landowners that have that. The problem is when you have one that doesn't put his part in, and then you get into the enforcement, that one is a bad kind of a bad situation, because there's been some times that it hasn't been up to par. And like I've said to Tony about it, I hate maybe the enforcement, because I was trying to sell the property before and I sold that. But in those situations where you've got a shared ownership and you've got one person paying, sometimes that works out as a bad deal that just doesn't pencil out for one guy, and he just neglects the sign. And I'm going to say I do agree with some of the enforcement on it. When panels are out of these signs, things like that nature, there needs to be some kind of recourse for the city to say, hey, you need to get your panels fixed. If there was a case where one of the sign guys that did some stuff in town, and there was kind of a backlog. I don't know if this was before COVID or not, and several people had signs down because of a storm. It need to be a reasonable time frame, and sometimes those time frames have to be amended due to there's only certain sign guys in town that'll do those, or you're going to have to try to pull somebody out of Dallas. Those guys get very busy, and sometimes they may be 5 to 6 months behind. You just need to, when you do the enforcement on that, you might need to recognize some of the time frames, because I can tell you it could get very frustrating trying to get a sign guy from Dallas or another sign guy to get those done in a timely manner.
Thank you. Good point. Anyone else care to speak? If not, could you please add Josh Massey to the committee and the emails? And any other comments from council? I want to say again how much I appreciate everybody's time, especially staff, especially those of you who have taken an interest in our community. We all want to do the very best that we can for our community and for our citizens. So anyway, it's 6:45. Thank you for your time. Please have a good evening, and we'll have a report on July 13th. Thank you very much.